welcome to our panel of conspiracy theories and propaganda throughout pop culture and in our real worlds. I am JD Lombardi. We don't need a mask right now because we are doing this at Comic-Con at home. I am a middle school science teacher who is very passionate about science literacy, and to be science literate also means to be skeptical of conspiracy theories and propaganda overall. We see it in pop culture and we see it in our real world for sure. So joining me are some very intelligent individuals. GL Lambert, who co-produces and co-writes some of these videos that we do on the channel, is with me.
It is I, GL Lambert of Earth 2, or Earth Prime, whatever you want to call it. I'm the resident conspiracy theorist. I do believe Jar Jar Binks is a Darth Lord Sith. I have Lupe De La O, who taught me how to tie my shoes. What's going on, Lupe?
Hi, everyone. So my name is Guadalupe De La O. I'm a high school science teacher who's also passionate about raising scientifically literate citizens who are capable of consuming media critically and make informed decisions on policy. And now we're off to Justin.
Oh, God. How you guys doing? I'm Justin. I'm a writer at mentalexhaustion.com. I write about pop culture, comics, wrestling, and movies. Magneto was right and Epstein didn't kill himself. You can't prove me otherwise.
We start with, well, conspiracy. And what is it? And, you know, most of us know already, but if any of our young viewers are there, it's just a joining together of two or more people acting in collusion. They're working together to achieve a desired goal, a desired outcome. And we see that throughout mass media, throughout storytelling. You can read this for yourself, but I do want to quote the great Alan Moore, the author of Watchmen and many other critically acclaimed graphic novels and comic books. Conspiracy theorists believe in a conspiracy because it is more comforting. The truth is far more frightening. Nobody is in control. The world is rudderless. That's a terrible Alan Moore impersonation, but let's go to the panel.
Yeah, I totally agree with him on this because, the funny thing is, Moore made most of his money off of conspiracy theories, most importantly, Watchmen. Huge conspiracy theory, V for Vendetta, more conspiracies. Even, if you go back to his old comics, they're all conspiracies that are kind of made true.
Yeah, and it's funny because we as creators are in the business of manipulating the audience. And, we kind of play off this paranoia or this want to be smart. How many times have you watched the movie and you were like, I figured out who did it. I know the ending of Usual Suspects. I figured out who killed Laura Palmer before anyone else. It's like conspiracies always make us think, and we like the power of feeling like we're the smartest people in the room. So I think when he says the real world is rudderless and it has no control, it's kind of taking a rug out of everyone who thinks they're so smart and they can figure these things out. Because the problem when it comes to a storytelling point is yes, this is entertaining, it's engaging, you're enjoying yourself. But when you take movie plots and put them in the real world situations, it becomes kind of, it may not be as complex as a Christopher Nolan movie.
I think to add to that, Gary, you talk about this wanting to make sense of things that we all foster since early childhood. We all have this natural curiosity to want to solve things. And I think we feed off of other people that we can join to. We want to, this is also sort of like a human need to connect. And so we want to, be with other people who have these same ideas that we do.
Yeah, and just to agree with all of you, just to kind of put it all together, it's also, it's wanting to feel smart, it's wanting to feel involved, and it gives a sense of comfort. It's in a weird way, even though it's kind of scary. If you believe the Illuminati or whatever, it's just like, well, I have some sense of control because I know X, Y, and Z. I feel like I have more control of my emotions, not so much of the world, because I guess that's the opposite. Mm-hmm. Intellectually, you're thinking, I have no control. My voting means nothing. Everything means nothing. I don't know. But it's to be careful with the word control. It's a sense of control in our mind and how we control our thoughts and feelings and personality. All right, so our first section deals with this in storytelling. So, any good mystery is usually some sort of conspiracy, unless it's one person acting alone, of course. But it's full of it. We love it. Artists and creators have primed our brains to ask, who's really behind this evil plot? And that's extended into the real world. Why are conspiracies so ingrained in our entertainment? Our comic and movie fans, all of us in this panel, and most people who are watching, Are we more susceptible to conspiracy theories because we've been reading and watching these stories for a long time?
Well, like you said, are comic fans and cinephiles more susceptible to conspiracy theories? Yeah, for sure we are. It's because it's fun. Solving a mystery, and like human beings, we're like naturally curious, just like Lupe said. Like we're willing to put ourselves in like precarious situations to find answers. And those are always the best tales. The Hobbit, like any like hero's journey is like going out there and finding out what is the real story? What's behind everything? Why is the sky blue? What are the stars? We're all trying to figure it out. They're all conspiracy theories before they're actually like, proven in a sense.
I've always, since I was young and watched Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair and this type of stuff, the wrestling world, I was always conditioned to ask, what's the swerve? What's the next betrayal, or what's the next twist? And I think as a movie fan and growing up, going to college for screenwriting, they always tell us you got to lay in that second act twist. There's always that second act plot point where like everything has to like be turned on a dime or turned on its head. So of course, as cinephiles and comic fans, we always want the twist. Even video game fans, we want that twist in the middle of Final Fantasy, or we want that twist on The Last of Us that shows us like, wow, it's not at all what we thought it was. So I think we're always thinking about, what is this? So it's totally ingrained.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I think it's super ingrained. I don't think we're realizing it as it's happening. I think over time you develop this ability to think in that way just because of all the, they all follow the same formula, like you're saying. And so over time, I think it gets those gears turning. But in the moment, I don't know that we're as conscious of that. We want more.
Yeah.
We just crave, that feeling of wanting more.
And it makes sense because the stories we grew up with, I mean, we're dating ourselves, but watching, Transformers and He-Man and She-Ra and all that, it's so simplistic.
Speak for yourself. I grew up on Dragon Ball, bro.
Well, I'm sure Dragon Ball is the same, even though I don't know it. Sorry, Dragon Ball fans, I'm just didn't get into it. But the heroes are so clearly the heroes. The villains are so clearly the villains. They rarely, at least in the 80s and early 90s, they rarely pushed this idea of subversion and spies. I mean, a little bit. I remember there's a classic G.I. Joe episode, rocking a Cobra shirt, where Dusty becomes, this is a long time spoiler alert, Dusty, G.I. Joe, becomes a traitor. Like, that was like, oh my God, it blew our minds because it was so one-dimensional. It was just like, Skeletor's the bad guy, He-Man's a good guy. There's no debate. And then it's just natural to get into storytelling. You want to pick it up a notch and bring in these layers and make it, a little bit more like a mystery. And so, yeah, that's good storytelling. You should have these layers going on.
Conspiracy is good for entertainment, right? I think we can all agree on that.
Oh yeah, for sure. It leads to better story, better conflict. I mean, you need no conflict, no story. So
I think it also speaks to, the masks that we wear, and as complex human beings, we want to explore this. We want to explore like this hidden world, and who we are deep inside. Like, there is some darkness to all of us, and there is this hero that we all want to unleash as well.
Or villain.
Hence your Anakin Vader shirt, Mr. Lambert.
Oh, Annie.
The Shield and Hydra thing, it's like a layer within a layer, especially in the MCU. It turned around a whole different story. I'm more familiar with the Secret Invasion storyline, or the Secret War when Cap became Hydra. That was more of my take of this Hydra being Shield. Everyone trusted Captain America. The citizens all trusted, quote unquote, Shield, and they just let them rush out all over the nation, as opposed to like all the rest of the heroes who knew it was a giant conspiracy.
All these years, S.H.I.E.L.D. has been Hydra, which is this grand conspiracy that no one wanted to believe, no one knew about. So it's a great example of like how conspiracy could be, a theory can end up being true. Hydra is S.H.I.E.L.D. And leading to the Superman theory, which is a newer one, is basically in the Doomsday Clock storyline, the American government is accused of manufacturing metahumans. So basically, after Superman, the U.S. government said, wait, we need more of these guys. We need to make bad guys and good guys and have them fight. That way, people can say America's the big bad. And no one's going to mess with America because we have all these villains, all these superheroes. But in the as the conspiracy goes, it's all fraudulent. All these people are working for the American government and playing the role of hero and villain. There's no Flash and Reverse Flash. These are all actors playing a game, which goes to that big global conspiracy of like nationalism and patriotism playing itself out in DC Universe.
Yeah, the interesting part about that is that the audience who's reading, we all know that it's all not a conspiracy. Because we know all the origins of every single superhero, but the people within the DC Universe, imagine just living in Metropolis. You just see like two Flashes fighting each other out on like 6 p.m. news, and then like 3 Green Lanterns flying over top. Sounds kind of fishy and a little bit too of a coincidence. You know, I trust Lex Luthor in that world, though.
2 more examples, the Watchmen, of course, and the Legacy virus in X-Men. But from Dr. Manhattan, causing cancer, there's a whole thing around that. Ozymandias is using conspiracies to gain control of the world and all. I mean, it's just, as Justin said, it's just Moore's books, especially Watchmen, is chock full of conspiracy theories and propaganda as well.
I think the cool thing about the Legacy virus, and we're referring to the one, not in the comics, but the one from the 90s TV show, you know what I'm talking about. Anyway, the Friends of Humanity, they blame mutants for spreading this virus. All mutants are infectious. So what do? We lock them up or we destroy them. So what we're seeing with the coronavirus is kind of hinted at in the Friends of Humanity and the mutant problem. And it leads to this bleak future, days of future past, where all the mutants are hunted down and extinguished because they're bad for humans.
Yeah, the leader of the Friends of Humanity, Graydon Creed, who is actually Sabretooth's son, a little bit of a complex he has right there. But like he stirs up national hysteria against mutants because they're just, quote unquote, all of them have this virus. So while they're quarantined and stuck somewhere, like he can bolster his ranks of his hate group, Friends of Humanity, and anti-mutant sentiment.
Yeah, which is a great conspiracy. It's like, let's just unleash this virus, cause hysteria, and we bolster our numbers. Mm-hmm. Does that sound familiar?
But every good conspiracy, of course, needs solid propaganda. So this does go hand in hand. It's difficult to talk about one without the other. Relatively recent example is Spider-Man Far From Home, where Mysterio has this whole, what a grand plan. I mean, such a great example of this. But then it has legs. It goes beyond that. The movie ends with, just in case I die, he's got a plan B. Let's make sure the Daily Bugle gets this. Proof is in the pudding.
Mysterio talks about how everybody, he knows that everybody wants something to believe in. And so he totally capitalizes off of everybody's fear.
Which is very true in the real world, as we know.
Do you think the Avengers are going to vouch for Spider-Man, or will they be scared of media backlash of being associated with him?
Given that they're ran by a propaganda group called Hydra, they're going to side with the media because they don't want their own nefarious plans.
So our second part of this 3-part presentation is we just highlight just like 4 characters, many villains, but even some heroes that have used propaganda to ease their path to their goals, to their will. Here's a good definition of propaganda that you can read on yourself, but it's just we put it out here because it's not your Oxford or your Webster definition of propaganda. It's from these 2 authors on a good book called Propaganda and Persuasion. And we start off with what makes good and believable propaganda work in pop culture, work in storytelling, and what makes these characters effective and realistic. So here's just 4 good examples. First 2, Bane.
The image Bane everyone goes to is from Dark Knight Rises because it's the quintessential Bane. The Bane in the comics is kind of a brute. He's smart. He tracks down the Dark Knight and he breaks his back, but like he's not very political. In the Dark Knight Rises, what's really going on is that he wants Gotham to take back the city. The city's a mess. The police force is corrupt, and he makes a lot of sense. But it's propaganda because he's pushing Ra's al Ghul's conspiracy of destroy the city, rebuild it in my image, and there you have it. So Bane is basically a propaganda tool used by Ra's to take over Gotham.
Gotham is yours. Sorry, I had to do that.
A better example is the Mutant Brotherhood, for more things on there. I think it's more of a complicated propaganda to use. Like Magneto, for instance, has a safe haven for mutants who are persecuted, but his ultimate goal is to annihilate humankind, was his first goal. So it's like, I'm taking in all these people, but I have a nefarious goal behind it. Do all these people agree? They kind of have to because I'm bringing them in for safety, considering they're persecuted by the outside.
Magneto's propaganda was like, I want to protect you and inspire you and give you confidence. Love who you are as a mutant. No matter if you're green, have fins, can fly, or have no power that the X-Men want. I want you. I will protect you. These people don't love you. But as you said, Justin, his nefarious plot is we're going to take down the whole system and make a mutant world order, which is like genocide, which is kind of ironic given his Jewish past.
From propaganda, like, yeah, it's emotional appeal and it appeals to a disenfranchised minority for the most part. Kind of works.
And speaking about a disenfranchised minority, we got our boy Killmonger, who is the internet darling because he preaches empowerment, destroy the oppressor. What was the buzzword that when Black Panther came out? Oh, say it with me. Colonizer.
Oh yeah, colonizer became more of a word. Absolutely, yeah.
Jeez.
And what makes him such a good, effective villain is that there's a lot of truth to it. You're like, all right, I don't agree how you're doing this, but a lot of what you're saying makes sense. So that's what.
Again, another emotional appeal to a lot of people. Even like, and it's more realistic. Instead of us having powers, it's just people with different skin pigments. You know, people from Africa. He gave people in real life, you know, a feeling of like belonging and a feeling of like it's like a power fantasy in a sense. You know.
And think about Killmonger as he relates to Magneto. It's like, you're the Homo superior species, literally. You can drop buildings on people. With Killmonger, it's more nuanced. It's like, you're a superior race of people with superior technology. Why are your people being abused across the globe because of the color of their skin? The brown and Black people need to rise up and take what they're owed. And so a lot of people gravitate towards Killmonger because it makes them feel empowered, like Magneto made those mutants feel empowered. So it's more of a realistic look at what it means to like galvanize and spit propaganda to get your own way, which is Killmonger becoming the leader of this new world order, not there being a new democratic government. And speaking of government, my boy, Palpatine. JD, you love Palpatine. You love Valorum. What do you think about his propaganda?
A lot of us here joke about the prequels being insufficient, let's say, compared to the original trilogy. Now, some of it is nostalgia, but one great thing I would say about episodes 1 through 3 is the rise of Palpatine. For sure, like that was handled great. And Ian, the Senate. Yeah, and Ian, the actor who portrays him, I mean, I think there's like one cheesy moment that bothers me. Other than that, like he's fantastic in all the films, even the latest one. He's so Palpatine. But
we not mention.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
The new trilogy.
But his rise to power is realistic in the sense that we were talking about this the other day, where if you really break it down, his rise to power as Palpatine, as Senator and Chancellor and Supreme Chancellor, all of it is done legally. He works the system. Gee, I wonder if politicians do that today. On both sides they do, of course. They work the system legally. Now, what Darth Sidious and what other name he goes by? At one point he just becomes Emperor Palpatine and just merges the two. But in the prequels, any nefarious deeds is done as his alter ego. But technically, as Senator, Chancellor, and Supreme Chancellor Palpatine, everything is done legally. And he works the system. And we watch a true democracy slowly erode into a pure dictatorship. And
thunderous applause.
Our last section, this is where us geeky teachers get more involved, discerning facts from fiction. So how can we, especially our children, better utilize critical thinking skills to find truth among a sea of misinformation? Now we're going to make it real. We're stepping a little bit away from storytelling and to some real stuff and some dark stuff of what feeds these conspiracy theories. What's making people even think this? And we have a few examples listed here: MK Ultra experiments, big tobacco, the Tuskegee experiment on black males, which we should get into, especially in the recent climate of COVID and the protests. Oh my God, it's like those experiments alone are merging two major things happening right now in the United States and across the world. Iran Contra, I mean, go on and on. And so, what's feeding it? Who would like to start that?
We know that historically, the government has lied to us. Historically, underrepresented people have been part of experiments like the Tuskegee study. So that naturally creates a distrust in the system, which makes us question everything. Who's behind this? What do they want? You know, so I think we're getting this, not only what's happening, but what feelings is it producing in us? And we want to stick to what we know. We want to have as much control over our lives as we can, because we know we've been lied to.
When Snowden leaked all those documents, we got to see like, wow, we've been lied to way more than we ever imagined. And then you get the anti-vaxxers, like even they have something to grab onto with like, oh, polio did give people, the polio vaccine did give people cancer. So it's like, if it happened then, are they still lying to us? So like, it definitely feeds the beast when some of these things are proven to be true. But at the same time, a lot of these things came to light kind of easily, or because people blew the whistle, where a lot of the stuff that lingers around, like the JFK experiment or JFK assassination, really doesn't have any legs because no one's ever blown a whistle, or all these documents that we've exposed over the years never hint at anything nefarious.
Exactly. Just a simple crumb of truth can spread into something that's crazy about conspiracies. It's just one tiny thing that we can get, like even Snowden's emails and things like that, that can just lead to people trying to believe like, oh, this is complete and utter like truth about something, from anti-vaxxers to 5G and COVID. Like, it's just one small thing that you need to that someone needs to feed someone who has someone who can believe misinformation so quickly. And also other people just want to twist the narrative for their own purposes.
I also think this is part of the critical thinking that Lupe and I were talking about in teaching our students to be critical thinkers. You know, my kind of go-to thing with conspiracies and conspiracy theories is like, well, how many people are involved? It is technically more practical to pull off a conspiracy with less people. And so I'll use the example of JFK, like that assassination. That might be, there's documents that are yet to be released, Gar, for example. So I totally get the hysteria behind it. But I feel like if more people were involved in killing him, you know, that's plausible based on, say, a dozen or so people. But something like faking the moon landing, you got thousands and thousands of people involved. Where's the evidence? Russia would love to expose us on faking a moon landing. Where's that evidence at? Where's that at? And so I think part of the critical thinking, the rule of thumb is, how many people are involved? How plausible is it to pull the wool over our eyes for so long?
For the people in the comment section that believe in certain things, we're not trying to poo-poo on conspiracy theories and say nothing's wrong. Like we said, stuff was proven to be true over time. So we are trying to say things, we're not trying to dismiss you as conspiracy thinkers. It's good that you think, and you're always asking why. We want you to always ask why. And but we don't want to make you think your opinion's stupid or crazy unless you think Harry Potter is better than the Hunger Games, then you're stupid and crazy. But we want you to be able to debate these topics and ask where they come from, which leads us to our next slide, which is all about the current climate of conspiracy. Yes. We're living in a conspiracy age over this past 4 months since COVID hit. And here are some examples that you can see on your screen that show just some of the things that have taken control over our lives since we've been all at home and locked away.
All of this that you see on the screen right now happened within the last couple of months. And I think we could say largely because of the internet, the global World Wide Web has connected these, rather than just being pamphlets and brochures that were passed out. That's how it was done.
A lot of people are bored.
You have people that are socially isolated from each other. So, you know, they're logging onto those subreddits. They're looking at things on their feed, you know, and we've talked about how, you know, you have these filter bubbles. So you tend to see things that you already agree with on your social media feeds. And then to Justin's point earlier, you know, you've got that 5G virus connection. Yes, there could be medical implications down the road as a result of 5G. That doesn't necessarily mean it's going to result in the virus. You know, it's like apples and oranges. Yes, there might be some truth, there might be some consequence, but it's not going to lead to the virus itself.
There's some thought out there that the 5G is somehow responsible for an actual virus rather than replacing it. And you know, some of this stuff comes down to education and you know, some just basic understanding of what a virus actually is, what it does, how it spreads. This is basic stuff which, if you were taught this and you're older, it's gone. You have to. We have to keep learning. We have to keep up on this.
It seems if you learn the difference between like radiation giving you cancer or giving you brain tumors versus a viral infection, you're like, wait, the 5G thing doesn't hold up with basic elementary school or middle school science, I should say. But I think a lot of people aren't educated to like a viral infection versus these radio waves once caused cancer, which was real, that happened with a lot of the early experiments with microwaves and stuff like that. But to your point, a lot of people aren't educated on how a virus actually spreads and where it comes from, and even a definition of what a virus is.
I mean, a lot of that, and I always tell my students this, I'm like, guys, it's not just you. There's a lot of adults that don't get it. A lot of people don't know the difference between a cold and the flu. It's like virus and bacteria are so insanely different. Their sizes are dramatically different. The inner world, I mean, there's a good number of scientists who don't even consider viruses alive. I'm not a scientist, but as a teacher, I agree with that. It's basically DNA surrounded by a bundle of proteins and lipids that just act like this zombie robot that just, all they know to do is hack into the nucleus of a cell, replace its DNA, and trick it into reproducing. It's like
Mr. Smith from the Matrix, which proves that we're living in the Matrix, Justin.
Mm-hmm.
The coronavirus is nothing but Mr. Smith. Stay woke. A lot of these things, out of the shadows, pandemic, the Bill Gates microchipping things, these are all born on YouTube, which leads us to the whole thing of like, where are we getting this information from? They're not papers, they're not news articles, all YouTube videos made by people like you and I, and scientists that probably have a sketchy history. Like, just because someone has a PhD doesn't mean they're not a wacko. Doesn't mean they're smarter than
like
you.
Candy now.
And beyond the wacko, it's the money aspect. You know, we can't neglect that important aspect of profitability.
Yeah, and actually, it's a really good point because the pandemic and Out of the Shadows were like big YouTube hits that were shared on all social media platforms, and it's like, right, they're not legitimate. It's not legitimate journalism of any kind, but it makes sense if you're cynical to the media. If you're cynical to government, of course you're going, ooh, someone who knows more than the government, or someone who knows that a whistleblower of some sort wants to share, they're going to go to YouTube and Google's going to allow it. Well, it turns out Google is not going to allow it, and you can have your own conspiracy theory about that, but it's called social responsibility. If it's going to literally kill people because you're not wearing a mask or not being precautious, well, that becomes something totally different. If you want to think the moon landing is fake, great. You're not hurting anyone. But this stuff that we have, well, not the Out of the Shadows, but the medical stuff related is just like, ugh. And this is just 3 examples. Anything that's been published in peer-reviewed journals over and over again, like climate change, like GMOs being relatively safe, like vaccinations being relatively safe, have been turned on its head through YouTube, being a main platform. But, you know, it's also some news sites.
You know what I don't like about YouTube is that they're starting to censor these videos that say that spout these so-called conspiracy theories. And I think when you censor people, it just basically puts coal into the damn oven and lets people's mind go even wild. If you shut down pandemic, it gives more people curiosity to say, oh, let me
see what they did. Yeah,
exactly. If you shut down climate change video, oh, see, they don't want you to know the truth out there. All the videos are TED Talks about it being real, or they're trying to trick me into just watching somebody that's against it, saying it's a hoax. So I think YouTube and Google have to be more careful about censorship, because we all have the freedom of speech. Yes, if it endangers a life, it's kind of a gray area, but at the same time, it's not the same as shouting fire in a nursery.
No, it's true, and we the 4 of us discussed this the other day, and it's tricky. I don't think any of us pretend like we have the answer. Some things should be shut down, perhaps, but like it's a tricky balance of, I don't want to say First Amendment rights, though it kind of is, but I mean, it's a social media platform. You're signing up for it. Like, it's a business. But
I'm a First Amendment guy all through and through. I think that they should be able to put things out there. No calls for violence, no physical threats to people. But I think that it just comes down to good education that people have to get from a young age, or even get older. They have to continue to get smarter as things go on. And I think that figuring out that a conspiracy theory is crap is just as enlightening as figuring out a conspiracy theory is real. You know? Yeah. So Let's just take like Kyrie Irving, for instance, a basketball player, thinks the earth is flat. I think he's gonna have a revelation when he finds out that it's not flat. Like, oh man, I was wrong. But that's harder to take that you're wrong than it actually is that you're right, or to keep like digging coal into the fire of this untruth.
And that's the funny part about science is so much of it is based on being wrong all the time. Talk to any scientist, and that's sort of, that's the drive is you failed, you were wrong. Let's continue just, toward truth.
Yeah, that level of humility and letting go of the ego is so important in academia as a whole, not just the sciences. But
yes,
when you get the medical science, you have to, because now you have lives at stake. But no, I agree that if there's definitely like some things you think should be censored, take it off, but it's like, you're definitely going to be like, see, we were onto something, they took it off. I'm reiterating what you guys are saying. I don't think there's a clear answer of what the Facebooks and Googles and Twitters of the world need to do.
So how do we, this probably leads to the next slide, but how do we combat misinformation?
We want to focus on one study, a huge study that had multiple little studies or little experiments within the study, if you want to word it that way. But basically the idea is that people, especially students, everywhere from, they looked at middle school students all the way through college, are duped by online individuals and groups furthering their agenda. So in 2016, the great Stanford University, their history education group, brought this study. Middle school students, they mistook native advertisements as news stories when featured as sponsored content. Even some adults fall for this.
So if you look at this little ad on the screen there, the title it says the real reasons women don't go to tech, right? There's your clickbait. You want to know why, but there's no real article there. It says sponsored content. So, at a young age, like middle school, students couldn't tell that was an ad. And at the undergraduate level, students were given, these infographics on Twitter to analyze, and a lot of them didn't even bother to question, where the source was coming from. If there were links attached, they didn't click on them, which brings us to this point of, how many things get shared or retweeted without verifying any source or political motivation behind it.
Yeah, and it's not just kids, as we know it, us adults, and I'm sure all of us have responded emotionally to something and hit share or retweet, and it's just like, yo, verify first. The little snippet we have here is just the sponsored content. This is what the whole page looked like. And so you can see there are legitimate articles. There is something that is clearly an advertisement, but then you have the subversive advertisement. And this is before the internet. National Geographic, New York Times, the advertisers are getting clever. We're like, hey, let's make it look like an article. And then the publishers would have to push back, being like, you're looking too much like us. We don't want to give the wrong idea. And so students had a difficult idea. So basically it's like, what do we do? And if a lot of you are not teachers who are watching this, but a lot of you may be parents. And so parents are the first teachers overall. Forget us lowly teachers, like parents are the ultimate teachers. Really, how can we determine what's true, half truth, or false? And of course, it's to educate. We understand that, but education in some situations, in some demographics are broken. So we found something. There are at least 4 sites, and there's probably some more, unless you don't trust the sites. But Snopes is a classic one where you can go and fact check of something, especially if it's politically motivated. Factcheck.org, NewsELA is more for us teachers. It's in education. Google Scholar is academia, and a lot of people don't even know about this. Not just in the sciences, but it helps. Like if you want to think that GMOs cause you cancer or something like that, you are not going to find that on Google Scholar. Why? Because there's no such study published. Doesn't mean it's not possible. We have to be open to change, science geeks and scientists themselves, but Google itself is such a grand search engine that could pull up any belief on practically anything. But Google Scholar narrows it down to just to academics.
So All Sides here is a website where you can check, where your sort of this news media bias. So, we all tend to have certain go-to websites to where we get our news from. But as teachers, it's important to show our students all sides or both sides of an argument. And so this is a nice little infographic that shows you whether the news source you're looking at tends to lean left, right, or center. But beyond that, so these are sort of things that you can do at home for yourself too. You don't have to be a student. But public libraries also give you access to academic journals. So let's say you're like, I'm not really sure how to navigate Google Scholar. You can also look at things like JSTOR through access through your public library.
It's knowing where to check and also knowing where it's coming from. And so that's like, I would say that's like the first level of preparing yourself for disinformation, misinformation, conspiracy, all that stuff. So this is just an excerpt where I'm trying to give the skills to this student, this redheaded student here. But it's the idea that, this lives on YouTube. And so the idea is that you're going to find bad information on YouTube, but you can also find good information. So we're trying to fight the good fight and have useful, good information.
Facts are facts. There are no alternatives. Remember, Jimbo, it's all about sources. 1, be skeptical. Just because somebody says it doesn't make it true. 2, who's saying it? Make sure what you're reading or watching is from a reputable source. 3, verify. Independent verification can confirm whether something is factual. Make sure it was originally published in a professional journal. You can verify this with Google Scholar. Certain facts can also be verified on Snopes.com. You getting all this, Jimbo?
And like many students, of course, they may be just falling asleep to it or just in one ear out the other, but we do our best. So it's not so much about what to look or where to look for this information. As educators, we challenge ourselves, especially in the sciences, to teach them how. It's more about how to think, not what to think.
So, the purpose of the NGSS is to make sure that all students are scientifically literate and have access to, again, these critical thinking skills. So there's this de-emphasis on memorization, and just really thinking. There's this progression. So the same standards are covered between elementary, middle, and high school, but your understanding of them and your ability to question should improve or increase as you progress through your K through 12 journey. The whole idea is that, for some of us at the high school, this might be the last science class that a student ever takes. They're going on to, if they go on to higher education, they might be non-science majors. If they're not moving on to higher education, we just want to make sure that all students are able to make the right decisions on policy, which, we know can be very politicized nowadays. And so we want to make sure that they know the facts and they know how to question and be skeptical when they hear claims.
Part of the problem, and this is probably a science communication problem, I personally feel like the science community needs to get on the same page and perhaps use a different word than theory, because most people think of theory as just like a hunch, a guess, an idea, and it's not the case. It's not the case in sciences.
I actually disagree. I don't think we should change the word itself. I think what we need to work on is what we're saying is the public's understanding of what it really means. So in science, a theory is based off of well-supported evidence, of lots of experimentation, of scientific consensus. Whereas, when we're talking about conspiracy theory, these are things that are not backed by evidence and that people take, really true to heart, and it takes a lot to convince somebody out of it. With the theory, a scientific theory, we're acknowledging that as new evidence presents itself, that theory can change. It's not a law.
Also, when we pull up these two things here, these two infographics, one coming from curiosity.com and the other one coming from International Federation of Library Associations and Institutions. It's worth looking at. It's some of the stuff that you see in science anyway, that you see in academia for sure. It's like checking the source, checking the author, is it a joke of some kind? Be skeptical, but not cynical.
I think considering others' hypothesis is something,
Yeah.
Like you have to talk to other people, even if you think they're a crazy conspiracy theorist, like there is some truth in which they're holding on to. So being able to expand on that and have civil discourse with them about a certain situation actually would help a person out more than it would just dismissing someone.
I think this is where you bring in that whole idea of cancel culture. You don't just delete these people. You have to practice engage in conversation. But the other thing too is part of scientific argumentation is having a counter argument, responding with a counter argument. So you have to know the other side in order to respond.
Well, I'd rather would just engage in discourse, learn something from them. Hopefully they learn something from me. And, that shifting someone's idea, changing an idea takes years to do if you can. I don't know. Like, I have some people I respect who are against it.
I disagree with that. I think that good facts can change someone's opinion very quickly of something because it's no longer an opinion of theirs. I think we just live in, especially with social media and the ability to just find information at the drop of a hat, is that we find ourselves in these echo chambers of our same, like our exact same people we're around, all the exact same. We're affirming our beliefs to the point where we think it's actual truth. We're not opening ourselves up to other people's opinions or even true science out there because you believe that you know what's the best for you in this situation or what's the best for everyone else. Like, you have to get out of that mindset.
I wish it was that way, Justin, but it's not. People, even when you've seen this before, people will come with facts and like, oh no.
It's also good to know that like people are embarrassed when they're wrong. They're completely embarrassed when they're just shown out and they're absolutely wrong. So like even one-on-one discourse, it's not about scoring the point. It's about actually giving someone the truth. It's not about dunking on someone, not just getting the point. Like, you have to understand that these people have emotions. They're invested in what they looked at. They could have wasted hours looking at the conspiracy theory, and then in 2 seconds you just prove them. That could hurt someone for real. Having your beliefs affirmed feels so good. So
by your peers.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So if you're automatically right, you should also think this: if you're always right around the people you're with, there's something up. Yeah. Like there should be some healthy discourse between you and your friends. That's how like you actually bond with each other. You don't have to agree with everything, Captain America, Iron Man, they don't agree on everything, but they're all there for one specific thing, mostly values.
All right. You science nerds and teachers and you Magneto fan, little jerk right there. I hear all your little propaganda talk, but let's get into some real questions. My friend's cousin's baby mama knows a nurse who says the COVID thing is a joke. She says COVID is no deadlier than the flu. We don't wear masks for the flu, so why are we wearing masks for COVID? This fake Rona.
So why does she think this is the same as the flu? Where is she getting this information?
Her friend is a nurse. They work at a hospital. I don't know the woman, but she works there. I don't know which one, but she works at a hospital. Tell me why I should wear a mask when COVID-19 is the same as the flu.
What details do you know that it is the same exact as the flu?
You cough, you sneeze, you get better after a few days. Maybe a week. Maybe a week if you're not as strong as me.
Well, let me ask you a question then. If it was just the same as the flu, why would so many governments and businesses agree to shut down and hurt from this? A lot of people are hurting financially and otherwise.
It's political. It's an election year. It's all political.
Who would want that? I mean, I can't imagine any party wanting this.
Them.
Well, part of it is the source. If you look at the CDC and the WHO, the World Health Organization, they have something else to say. So what is wrong with those two sources rather than someone that that knows someone that knows?
Give me a specific website. Tell me what should I do to learn what you learn.
I think there's a couple of things. So to start with, the flu and COVID, we were talking about two different viruses. So one, I think you need to understand what is a virus, what are ways that this is passed on to you, and looking at the rates of infection. So if you want to look at the case number specifically, you can go to the CDC website to do this. Also, as JD mentioned, this is a global pandemic, so there you can look at different reporting agencies from different countries as well, if you're a little skeptical about the CDC itself.
Okay. You may be onto something, lady teacher.
All right, well, that's all the time we have. We hope you enjoyed it. If interested in any of us and our work, please stay connected. Here is all of our information.
Thanks for watching, and if you have any conspiracy theories you want to talk about, drop them in the comments section.
Just remember to always question and always look at multiple sides.
Let us know how we can make things better or whatnot, and may the force be with you all.
The civil discourse.
Cheers together at the same time.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Oh.
Thanks for watching.